The day I handed my parents the final mortgage payment, I thought I was giving them freedom. Instead, I handed them a weapon they'd use against me for the next 5 years of my life. I'm Sarah, 32, and until recently, I was that daughter. You know the type. The one who'd sacrifice everything to make her parents proud. The one who'd work 60-hour weeks as a paralegal to help them keep their house. The one who thought family meant something sacred. Honey, we have wonderful news. Mom's voice crackled through my phone speaker that Friday evening. Your father and I have been thinking. I should have recognized the sugary tone. It was the same one she used when I was 16 and she'd borrowed my first paycheck to pay for my brother's baseball camp. We've found the perfect tenant for the house, she continued. Such a lovely young woman, June. She's paying well above market rate. My fingers froze over the case file I'd been reviewing. Wait, you're renting out the house? The one I just spent 3 years paying off? Oh, darling, it's such a smart investment move, Dad chimed in from their extension. And since you have that spare room in your place... The weight of their words hit me like a brick. You want to move in with me? Just temporarily. Mum's voice rose an octave. 3 months tops. We thought it would be lovely to spend more time with you. I glanced around my carefully curated apartment, my sanctuary after long days at the firm. The spare room was my home office where I handled overflow casework, where I built my career piece by piece. When? I managed to ask. Well, June moves in next Tuesday, so... Next Tuesday? My voice cracked. That's 4 days from now. We knew you'd understand, sweetheart. You've always been our rock. Dad's tone carried that familiar note of authority that brooked no argument. Besides, after everything we've done for you... The guilt trip. Right on schedule. I ended the call feeling numb, memories flooding back. Mom pawning my college fund savings bonds for a family emergency that turned out to be a cruise. Dad insisting I skip my dream internship to help renovate their basement, always taking, always expecting, always wrapping their demands in the cloak of parental love. That night I couldn't sleep. I dug through my filing cabinet until I found it, the folder labelled Parents' Mortgage. 3 years of overtime slips, declined vacation requests, the promotion I'd turned down because it would have meant less flexible hours for making their payments. My phone buzzed. A text from Brooke, my closest friend at the firm. Drinks, you sound stressed. At the bar, I showed her the mortgage statements. I thought I was helping them retire peacefully. Instead, they're turning their house into an income property and invading mine. Brooke's eyes narrowed. Have you checked their bank statements recently? The ones you helped them set up online banking for? I hadn't. When I got home, I logged into their account. They'd never bothered changing the password I'd set up. What I found made my blood run cold. Regular deposits from June Rodriguez, dating back 3 months. They'd been planning this. They'd signed the lease long before their spontaneous announcement. My phone buzzed again. Mum, honey, we're thinking of bringing our bedroom set. Your guest room furniture is a bit basic. You don't mind, do you? I stared at the message, then at the bank statement, then at the framed photo on my wall, the 3 of us smiling after I'd handed them the final mortgage check. Mum's arms around me, Dad's proud beam. All lies. Another text from Mum. Also, Edmund Jr. might need to store some things in your garage, just temporarily. You know how your brother is with transitions. I felt something shift inside me. A lifetime of compliance cracked like thin ice. I opened my laptop and started typing. Dear June Rodriguez, I hope this email finds you well. I'm Sarah, the daughter of your new landlords. The reply came within minutes. Sarah, your parents told me so much about you. They mentioned you're letting them stay with you while they maximize the property's potential. They're so proud of having such a generous daughter. I closed my laptop and walked to my window, watching the city lights blur through unshed tears. 3 years of my life to pay off their house, and they'd turned it into a chess piece in their game of emotional manipulation. But here's the thing about being a paralegal. You learn that every contract has loopholes. Every agreement has weak points. And sometimes the most devastating revenge isn't served hot or cold. It's served with a notarized letter. Living with my parents was like watching a slow-motion home invasion, except the invaders came armed with guilt trips instead of guns. "Sarah, honey, these organic vegetables are so expensive," Mom said, rifling through my grocery bags. "I could get twice as much at the discount store." I bit my tongue and continued chopping onions for dinner. 1 week in, and they'd already rearranged my kitchen cabinets, replaced my shower curtain, and suggested I move my desk to the living room so they could have a proper bedroom setup. "And all these prepared meals in your freezer," she continued, clicking her tongue. "No wonder you're still single. Men want a woman who can cook from scratch." The knife slipped, nearly catching my finger. "I work 50-hour weeks, Mom, sometimes more." "Well, if you'd let us help with the rent, instead of insisting on paying everything yourself." "I own this place," I reminded her. "There is no rent." Dad looked up from his newspaper. "About that, Princess, your mother and I have been thinking—" The doorbell cut him off. Through the peephole I saw Oscar, my ex, holding a cardboard box. "Just dropping off your old law books," he said when I opened the door. "Found them while cleaning out the garage." Mum materialized beside me. "Oscar, what a surprise! We were just talking about Sarah's single status." I watched Oscar's face shift from friendly to uncomfortable. "Mrs. Olson, good to see you. I didn't know you were staying here." "Oh yes, just temporarily while we rent out our house. You know, the one Sarah helped us pay off. Such a blessing to have a devoted daughter." She patted my arm. "Though if someone had made an honest woman of her when they had the chance." The silence that followed was deafening. "Mom," I warned, but she was on a roll. "I mean, 5 years of dating and not even a proposal. Sarah was devastated, weren't you, honey? She cried for weeks." Oscar's jaw tightened. "Actually, Mrs. Olson, Sarah ended things because it wasn't right," I cut in. "And that was years ago. Oscar, thanks for the books. I'll text you later." After he left, Mum turned to me. "You shouldn't be so cold to him. He was the best prospect you've had." "I have to get ready for work," I muttered, grabbing my keys. At the office, Brooke took one look at my face and dragged me into the break room. Spill. I told her about the morning's events, about how they'd commandeered my spare room, about the subtle ways they were trying to reshape my life into their vision. "You need to set boundaries," she said, stirring her coffee, "before they start thinking your house is their new retirement plan. They're my parents, Brooke. What am I supposed to do? Kick them out?" "Why not? They kicked you out of your office without blinking." That evening I came home late, hoping they'd be asleep. Instead, I found them in my living room with papers spread across the coffee table. "Perfect timing, really," Mom was saying. "Sarah's always been responsible with money. If we merge the properties into a family trust—" "What properties?" I asked from the doorway. They jumped, shuffling papers quickly. "Just discussing retirement planning, Princess," Dad said smoothly. "Nothing for you to worry about." But I'd seen enough. Property deeds, trust documents. My address circled in red ink. That night I lay in bed, listening to them whisper in the next room through the too thin walls. "Needs to understand family comes first. Her name's already on the mortgage documents. Just a matter of convincing her." My phone lit up with a text from Oscar. "Sorry about today. Your mom hasn't changed." I replied, "Neither have I. Still fighting the same battles. Remember what you told me when we broke up? I can't keep setting myself on fire to keep others warm." Maybe it's time to follow your own advice. I stared at his message for a long time, remembering why we'd really ended things. Not because of my career, like Mom believed, but because he'd seen how my parents drained me, how I'd learned to make myself small to keep the peace, and he couldn't watch me disappear. Another text came through, this time from Brooke. Check your email. Found some interesting legal precedents about family property disputes, just in case. I opened my laptop, the screen's glow illuminating the dark room. As I read through Brooke's research, something cold and determined settled in my chest. Mum's voice drifted through the wall. Once we're on the deed, we can finally relax. Our Sarah would never let her parents down. They had no idea how wrong they were. We need to talk. I set my coffee mug down hard enough to make them look up from their breakfast. 2 weeks of invasion had pushed me past my breaking point. About what, sweetie? Mom's innocent tone didn't match her sharp eyes. About how long you're planning to stay. And about the trust documents I saw yesterday. Dad folded his newspaper deliberately. Now, princess. Don't princess me. You're trying to add yourselves to my house deed, aren't you? The silence stretched like a rubber band about to snap. Mom's face did that thing where she transformed from sweet maternal figure to wounded martyr in seconds flat. How could you accuse us of such things? Her voice trembled. After everything we've sacrificed for you. Sacrificed? I laughed, the sound harsh even to my own ears. I paid off your mortgage. I gave up promotions to help you, and now you're collecting rent on that house while trying to take over mine. Take over? Dad's voice rose. We're your parents. Everything you have is because of us. I have what I have because I worked for it. Mum burst into tears, right on cue. I carried you for 9 months. I gave up my career to raise you, and this is how you repay us. I gripped the edge of the counter. I've been repaying you my entire life. You're being selfish, Dad declared. Family means supporting each other. Your mother and I need security in our golden years. And what about my security, my space, my right to live without... You're right. Mum's tears vanished. Let me tell you about rights, young lady. Everything you are, everything you've achieved, was only possible because of us. Your education. We drove you to school every day. Your job. Who paid for your first suit? Your confidence. Who told you could do anything? Who took my college fund? Who guilted me out of every major life decision? Who... Enough! Dad slammed his hand on the table. We're your parents. We know what's best, and if you can't see that, maybe we raised you wrong. The next few days were arctic. They stopped speaking to me directly, instead having loud conversations about ungrateful children when I was within earshot. They invited their friends over without asking, rearranged my furniture while I was at work, and criticised every aspect of my life in stage whispers. At the office, I couldn't focus. Files blurred before my eyes, deadlines loomed like threats. Luke, my boss, caught me staring blankly at my computer screen. Sarah? He closed my office door. You've been off your game lately. Everything okay? I opened my mouth to say yes, but what came out was a choked sob. Luke listened as I spilled everything. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair. You know, I've been practicing family law for 20 years. Want to know the biggest lesson I've learned? I wiped my eyes. What? Blood doesn't give anyone the right to abuse your boundaries. That evening I came home to find a thick envelope on my kitchen counter. Inside was a letter formally requesting I consider adding my parents to my deed for security and legacy purposes. Mum appeared in the doorway. We had a lawyer friend draw it up, just to make things official. A lawyer friend? I examined the letterhead. It was from a real estate office that had been disbarred 3 years ago. We're not getting any younger, she continued. And really, what else are you going to do with this place? You're not married, no children. We're all you have. The words hit like physical blows, each one calculated to land where I was weakest. But something was different this time. Maybe it was Luke's words, or maybe I'd finally reached my limit. You're wrong, I said quietly. I have myself, and that's enough. Don't be dramatic. Get out. What did you say? I said get out of my kitchen. Of my space. You have 30 seconds before I call the police and report trespassers. Dad appeared behind Mum. You wouldn't dare! I pulled out my phone. Try me. They retreated, but I heard them in the guest room talking in urgent whispers. Through the wall came Mom's voice. She'll calm down. She always does. And if she doesn't, well, there are things about Sarah's past that her fancy law firm might find interesting. I sat on my kitchen floor, shaking with rage and fear and something else, something that felt dangerously like freedom. My phone buzzed with a text from Brooke. How'd it go? I typed back, they're threatening to expose my secrets to the firm. Her response was immediate. Good thing we've been documenting everything. Time to show them who they're really dealing with. I looked at the fake legal letter in my hands and made a decision. If they wanted to play with legal documents, I'd show them what a real one looked like. I found my old journals in a box at the back of my closet, hidden behind winter coats and forgotten shoes. The pages smelled like teenage angst and broken trust. October 15th, 2006. Mom borrowed my college application money again. Said it was for Dad's business opportunity. Found out later they bought a timeshare in Florida. March 3rd, 2007. Dad forged my signature on the withdrawal slip for my savings account. Said it was my duty to help family. The account is empty now. Each entry was a punch to the gut, a reminder that their current behaviour wasn't new. It was just the latest verse in a very old song. My phone rang. It was June, their tenant. Sarah, I hope it's okay that I'm calling. Your parents gave me your number for emergencies. Is everything all right with the house? Actually, she hesitated. I overheard something I think you should know. Your parents were here yesterday checking on things. They were talking about how they're going to convince you to sign over your house. My hand tightened on the phone. What exactly did they say? They mentioned something about your soft heart, how you'll eventually give in because you always do. And, she lowered her voice, they're telling everyone they're going to live with you permanently, that you're going to gift them your house in your will. I thanked her and hung up, my mind racing. A text from Brooke lit up my screen. Emergency wine night? At her apartment, I spread out my evidence. The journals, screenshots of bank statements, photos of the fake legal documents they'd tried to pressure me with. Holy shit, Brooke whispered, flipping through the pages. This is straight up financial abuse. And look at these patterns. They've been doing this for decades. I need to stop them, I said, but they're threatening to reveal my secrets to the firm. Brooke snorted. What secrets? That time you got a speeding ticket? Or when you dated that guy in accounting? They'll make things up. They're good at that. Then we beat them to the punch. She pulled out her laptop. First, we document everything. Then we set up cameras in your house. Legally, of course. And finally, she grinned, we give them enough rope to hang themselves. The next day, I installed security cameras in my common areas and changed all my passwords. That evening, I heard Mom on the phone in their room. Yes, she's being difficult now, but we have ways of handling Sarah. Did I tell you about the time she almost got arrested in college? Of course, that was just a misunderstanding, but imagine if her firm found out. I pulled out my phone and texted Oscar. Remember when my parents told everyone I almost got arrested in college? His reply was quick. You mean when they called the cops because you were late coming home from study group? I was there. Still have the incident report where the officers said your parents were wasting police resources. Another piece of evidence for my growing file. I spent the next few hours updating my will, explicitly excluding them from any inheritance. Then I called June back. There's something else, she said. They're charging me way above market rate, claiming the extra is for family maintenance, but I've seen them brag to neighbours about pocketing the difference. Would you be willing to put that in writing? Already documented everything. I'm a court reporter. It's kind of my thing. That night I heard them in the kitchen, their voices carrying through the vents. Edmund, what if she really doesn't back down this time? She will. Remember when she wanted to study abroad? One little guilt trip about her sick grandmother, and she gave up her scholarship. But she seems different lately, colder. Then we remind her what family loyalty means. I've already drafted a letter to her firm just in case, a concerned father's worry about his daughter's ethical choices. I sat in my darkened living room, listening to them plot my professional destruction over cups of my expensive tea. The same tea Mom had criticised me for buying just that morning. My phone buzzed with messages from my support network. Brooke, documentation all set, ready when you are. Oscar, found those old police reports, sending them now. June, rental agreement copies and recorded conversations attached. Luke, my door's always open if you need backup. I opened my laptop and began typing. Dear Mr. Harrison, I'm writing to formally request legal representation in a matter of property rights and harassment. The lawyer's response came within minutes. Ms. Olson, given the evidence you've presented, I believe we have a strong case for immediate action. Shall we discuss strategy tomorrow morning? In my guest room, my parents continued plotting, unaware that their weapon of choice, documentation, was about to be turned against them. They'd taught me well about family loyalty. Too well. Now it was time to show them exactly what I'd learned. I've been thinking about what you said, I announced over breakfast, watching their faces light up with predatory hope. About family unity and securing the future. Mum clasped her hands together. Oh, sweetheart, I knew you'd come around. We should celebrate, I continued, keeping my voice honey-sweet. How about a family dinner tomorrow night? I'll cook. Dad beamed. That's my girl. Always knew you'd make the right choice. I spent the next day preparing, but not for dinner. Every conversation was recorded. Every threatening comment, every manipulation, captured by the hidden cameras Brooke had helped me install. Your mother's making her special casserole, Dad said that evening, watching me chop vegetables. The one you loved as a child. How nice! I didn't mention that I'd hated that casserole, that I'd only eaten it because they'd guilt-tripped me about Mom spending hours in the kitchen. The doorbell rang at exactly 7. Mum opened it to find Brooke standing there with a bottle of wine. What's she doing here? Mum's smile turned brittle. I invited her, and a few others, for the celebration. Before they could object, Oscar arrived with dessert. Then June showed up carrying a folder of house maintenance records they'd requested. June! Dad's voice cracked. What a surprise. She's part of the family now, isn't she? I said sweetly. Since she's living in your house. The doorbell rang again. Luke stepped in, followed by Mr. Harrison, the lawyer they didn't know I'd hired. Sarah, Mom hissed, what is this? Family unity, I replied. Isn't that what you wanted? We gathered around my dining room table, the tension thick enough to cut. Mum served her casserole while shooting daggers at my guests. Dad kept clearing his throat, clearly unsure how to manipulate an audience this size. Before we eat, I said, standing, I want to share something special. I pulled out a thick manila envelope. Since we're all here to discuss family property matters. Dad's face reddened. Princess, perhaps this isn't the time. Actually, it's the perfect time. I opened the envelope. I have some documents of my own, but first, why don't you show everyone what you brought? Mum's hand shook as she reached into her purse, producing their fake property transfer papers. We just want to secure our family's future, she said to the table at large. Interesting approach, Mr. Harrison spoke up, adjusting his tie, especially since that letterhead belongs to a disbarred law firm. The colour drained from Dad's face. Who are you? Someone very interested in your creative legal documentation. He turned to June. Ms. Rodriguez, would you mind sharing what you told me about your rental agreement? June pulled out her own folder. The rate is 40% above market value, with the excess allegedly going to family maintenance. I have recordings of Mr. and Mrs. Olson bragging about pocketing the difference. That's a lie! Mum stood up, trembling. Sarah, are you going to let these people attack your parents like this? Like you attacked my career. I played the recording from their kitchen conversation about sending letters to my firm. Luke's face darkened as he listened. We were trying to protect you, Dad insisted, by forging my signature, by emptying my accounts. I spread out photocopies of old bank statements, by threatening my professional reputation. Everything we did was for you. Mom's voice rose hysterically. We gave you life, and I gave you everything else. I nodded to Mr. Harrison, who pulled out another document, including the house you're currently renting out for profit, the house I paid off, the house that, according to these records, you've been collecting rent on for 3 months before your emergency need to move in with me. The silence was deafening. Brooke poured herself more wine, watching with barely concealed satisfaction. Oscar studied his plate, a small smile playing at his lips. Dad reached into his jacket and slammed a final envelope onto the table. Then you leave us no choice. Here's the deed transfer we had drawn up. Your signature is just a formality. Mom, actually, Mr. Harrison interrupted, any property transfer would be void, given the documented pattern of coercion and fraud. In fact, my firm is very interested in reviewing all financial interactions between the parties over the past decade. Mom burst into tears. Dad's face turned purple. But before either could speak, I placed one final document on the table. Don't worry, I said softly. I've taken care of everything. All you have to do is sign. They stared at the eviction notice, their faces a symphony of shock, rage, and disbelief. You wouldn't, Mom whispered. I smiled, thinking of all the times they'd said that before, all the times I'd backed down. Try me. The casserole grew cold as my parents stared at the eviction notice, their faces cycling through emotions like a slot machine. Shock, anger, disbelief, and, finally, their favourite, martyrdom. After everything we've done for you, Mom whispered, her voice trembling, you'd throw your own parents out on the street. Just like you threw me out of my office, my peace, my life. Dad slammed his fist on the table, making the wine glasses rattle. This is outrageous. We're your parents. Exactly, Mr. Harrison interjected smoothly, which makes the pattern of financial exploitation even more concerning. Exploitation, Mom's voice rose an octave. We gave her everything, including unauthorized withdrawals from my accounts. I pulled out my old bank statements. Or the credit card you opened in my name when I was 19. That was for emergencies, Dad protested. Like your golf club membership? June cleared her throat. Should I mention the way you've been overcharging me for rent and claiming it's for property taxes? Stay out of this, Mom snapped. This is family business. Family business? Brooke laughed. Is that what you call fraud these days? Dad stood up, looming over the table. Sarah, if you do this, there's no going back. We'll tell everyone what kind of daughter you really are. You mean a successful paralegal who paid off your mortgage? Luke's quiet voice cut through the tension. Or did you have some other story in mind? She's not the angel you think she is, Mom said, her tears vanishing. Did she tell you about the time she stole money from us? Oscar snorted. You mean when she withdrew her own college fund to pay for your roof repairs? We have proof, Dad threatened, pulling out his phone. Pictures, documents. Fabricated documents, Mr. Harrison corrected. Like the ones you tried to use to claim her house? Would you like to discuss the legal implications of forgery? Mom's face contorted. Sarah, honey, you're not thinking clearly. Let's discuss this privately, just family. Everyone here is family, I said quietly. They're the family I chose, the ones who support me instead of draining me. You ungrateful little... I believe, Mr. Harrison interrupted, the eviction notice requires a response within 48 hours. I suggest you review it carefully. Dad snatched up the document, his hands shaking. This isn't legal. It can't be. Actually, June spoke up, as a court reporter, I can confirm it's perfectly valid. And as your tenant, I can testify about your rental practices if needed. You're all against us, Mom wailed. Our own daughter turning everyone against us. No, I stood up slowly. You did that yourselves. Every manipulation, every guilt trip, every stolen dollar. It was all you. If you do this, Dad's voice dropped to a dangerous whisper, we'll make sure your firm knows everything about the money, the men, the straight A student who worked her way through college. Luke cut in. The paralegal who's never missed a deadline. Please tell me more about my best employee. The room fell silent. Mom's mascara ran in black streaks down her face. Dad's hands crumpled the eviction notice. 48 hours, Mr. Harrison reminded them. After that, we proceed with legal action. You can't be serious, Mom pleaded. Where will we go? Back to your house, I suggested. The one I paid for, or is the rental income too important to give up? This isn't over, Dad growled, grabbing his jacket. Come on, Wendy, we know when we're not wanted. But our things, Mom protested. You have 48 hours to collect them, I said, under supervision. They stormed out, Mum's sobs echoing down the hallway. The door slammed hard enough to rattle the windows. Silence fell over the dining room. Brooke reached for the wine bottle. Well, that was intense. Are you okay? Oscar asked softly. I looked around the table at my real family, the ones who'd shown up to support me, to witness my liberation, to stand guard against the tsunami of guilt and manipulation. I'm better than okay, I said, surprising myself with how true it felt. They'll try again, Luke warned. People like that don't give up easily. Let them try. Mr. Harrison gathered his papers. We have everything documented. Their next move will only strengthen our case. June raised her glass. To freedom. To boundaries, Brooke added. To chosen family, Oscar said quietly. I lifted my glass, watching the light catch the wine like liquid courage. Through the walls, I could hear my parents arguing in their room, soon to be just another spare room, empty of their presence and their poison. To taking back my life, I whispered, and drank deeply. The next morning I woke to the sound of shattering glass. I rushed to the kitchen to find Mom deliberately dropping my grandmother's china teacups onto the tile floor, one by one. Dad stood by the counter, methodically ripping pages from my law books. Stop! I grabbed my phone, already dialing. What are you doing? Teaching you about family loyalty, Dad snarled, tearing another page. If we can't have your house, Mum said, dropping another cup, you can't have these precious memories either. I hit record on my phone. You realise you're being filmed? They froze, finally noticing the security cameras in the corners. You'd record your own parents? Mum's voice dripped venom. Well, let me give them something worth watching. She grabbed my laptop from the counter. The front door burst open. 2 police officers entered, followed by Mr. Harrison and a security guard. Perfect timing, I said, still recording. They've been here about 3 minutes. Put the laptop down, ma'am, one officer ordered. This is private property, Dad protested. Yes, Mr. Harrison agreed. Ms. Olson's private property, from which you've been legally evicted. Mum clutched the laptop tighter. We're her parents. We have rights. The right to remain silent, the officer suggested, reaching for his handcuffs. Everything else is up for debate. You wouldn't dare arrest us, Dad stepped forward. Sarah, tell them about the money you owe us. I played back the kitchen recording from my phone. If we can't have your house, you can't have these precious memories either. Destruction of property, Mr. Harrison noted, combined with the earlier threats, financial fraud, and violation of the eviction notice. Mum's face crumpled. We'll tell everyone what you did, how you abandoned us, how you forged my signature. I pulled out the old bank statements, stole my identity, tried to seize my house. Please, tell everyone. I'm sure the police would love to hear all about it. Officers, Dad tried a different approach. This is just a family misunderstanding. Our daughter is confused. Your daughter, Luke's voice came from the doorway, is one of the sharpest legal minds I know, and you're about to find out exactly how sharp. Mum dropped the laptop onto the counter. You're choosing strangers over your own blood. No, I said quietly. I'm choosing myself. For the first time in my life, I'm choosing myself. The officers moved forward with their handcuffs. Dad's face turned purple. If you do this, he growled, you'll regret it. We know things about you, Sarah, things that would ruin you. Like what? I challenged. The college fund you stole, the credit cards you opened in my name, the fake legal documents you tried to use to steal my house. Please share with the officers. They're very interested in fraud cases. Mum burst into tears, real ones this time, not the performative sobs she usually deployed. We gave you life, and I gave you everything else, but not anymore. The officers led them out, reading their rights. Mum wailed about ungrateful children. Dad threatened lawsuits. But their voices grew fainter, and then the door closed behind them. I stood in my destroyed kitchen, surrounded by broken china and torn books. Luke put a hand on my shoulder. You did the right thing. I know, I said, surprised to find I meant it. I just wish that they were different people. He squeezed my shoulder. Some parents don't deserve their children. Mr. Harrison was already on his phone, documenting the damage. We'll add this to the restraining order application. Between this and the financial evidence, they won't be able to come near you or your property again. I picked up a broken teacup handle, the last piece of my grandmother's set. They really thought they could break me by breaking my things. They never understood, Luke said, that you're not your possessions. You're not their possession either. My phone buzzed with a text from June. Police just called. Your parents tried to break into the house here too. Security cameras caught everything, adding it to the evidence file. Another text from Brooke. Just heard, coming over with wine and cleaning supplies, and bubble wrap for anything breakable that survived. And finally from Oscar. You did it. You really did it. Proud of you. I looked around my battlefield of a kitchen, at the broken pieces of my parents' last attempt to control me. They'd tried to shatter my world, not realizing they'd already lost their power to hurt me. Because sometimes the strongest thing you can do isn't holding on, it's letting go. I started sweeping up the broken china, each piece a memory I was finally free to leave behind. The doorbell rang as I was hanging the last frame in my home office, the eviction notice mounted beside the restraining order, my own personal declaration of independence. Special delivery, June called through the door, and some interesting news. I let her in, noticing the thick envelope in her hands and the gleam in her eyes. So, she settled onto my couch, guess who tried to rent an apartment in my building yesterday? My stomach tightened. They wouldn't. Oh, they would. Your parents showed up with fake references and everything. The landlord recognized them from the police report I'd shared with management. I poured us both coffee. Where are they staying now? With your cousin Rita, apparently. But here's the best part. June pulled out her phone, showing me a social media post. Rita's already asking around for advice about dealing with difficult house guests who won't leave. The irony made me laugh despite myself. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Your father and I are living in squalor because of you. Is this what you wanted, to see your parents suffer? Before I could respond, another text came through from Brooke. Don't answer them. That's what the restraining order is for. Also check your email. I opened my laptop to find an email from Luke. Sarah, in light of your exceptional handling of the Harrison case, the partners have decided to offer you a promotion. Junior associate, effective immediately. P.S. Your parents' anonymous letters to the firm about your questionable character only proved how professional you are under pressure. June read the email over my shoulder and squealed. They tried to ruin your career and accidentally launched it instead. This is better than Netflix. The doorbell rang again. This time it was Oscar carrying a houseplant. Housewarming gift for your new office, since you've reclaimed it and all. Thanks, I said, taking the plant. But you didn't have to. I wanted to. Besides, I heard about Rita's Facebook post, thought you could use a laugh. My phone buzzed again, Rita calling. Sarah, your parents, they're saying some things about you, about money they claim you owe them. I thought I should hear your side. I put the phone on speaker. What exactly are they saying? That you stole their retirement, that you tricked them into signing over their house, that you... Check your email, I interrupted. I'm sending you something. I forwarded her the entire documentation file, bank statements, forged signatures, police reports, everything. The silence on her end was deafening. Finally, holy shit, they tried to steal your house? Among other things. They've been here 3 days and already borrowed my emergency credit card, Rita said slowly. And Mom mentioned they did the same thing to you in college. Need my lawyer's number? God, yes. After we hung up, Oscar raised an eyebrow. Karma's working overtime on this one. Speaking of karma, June pulled out the envelope she'd brought. Your parents' tenant insurance claim for emotional distress was denied. Apparently, trying to illegally seize property doesn't qualify for compensation. I pinned the denial letter next to the eviction notice. My wall of freedom was complete. Nice gallery, Oscar commented. Most people hang family photos. I do have family photos, I gestured to my desk, where a new frame held a picture from the night of the confrontation. Me surrounded by Brooke, June, Oscar and Luke, all raising our glasses. Just not the kind my parents would understand. My phone buzzed one last time, a final text from Mum. You'll regret choosing strangers over blood. I showed it to June and Oscar. Should I respond? Actually, June grinned, I have a better idea. She took a photo of my wall of documents, then another of my desk photo, and one more of my new office nameplate. Sarah Olson, Junior Associate. Send them these, she said. No words needed. I hit send, then blocked their numbers. You know, Oscar said, adjusting the plant he'd brought, your mom always said you'd never survive without them. But look at you now, thriving. Because she survived them, June corrected, which is way more impressive. I looked around my reclaimed office at the evidence of my liberation mounted on the walls, at the friends who'd become family, at the life I'd built despite, or perhaps because of, everything my parents had tried to take from me. The plant Oscar brought was a peace lily. It would need care and attention to thrive, but unlike the toxic relationships I'd pruned away, this one would actually grow into something beautiful. Want to get dinner? June asked. Rita texted that she's kicking them out tomorrow. We should celebrate. I grabbed my keys, leaving the ghosts of guilt and obligation behind, with the mounted documents on my wall. Some families you're born into, others you build from the ashes of what tried to destroy you. I chose the latter, and I chose right.
You don't deserve this house, Emma, Michael sneered, tossing the property papers onto our kitchen counter. I've transferred it to Lisa. She'll make better use of it than you ever did. I stared at my husband of 12 years, my hands gripping the edge of the marble counter we'd picked out together. The same counter where we'd shared countless morning coffees, where we'd planned our future. Now it felt like ice under my fingers. You did what? My voice was surprisingly steady despite the earthquake happening in my chest. Michael's smirk widened as he lounged against the doorframe, his expensive new watch glinting in the afternoon light. You heard me. I transferred our house to my sister for $1. Completely legal. Lisa's always loved this place, and unlike you, she knows how to maintain a proper home. I glanced at the security panel near the kitchen door, its tiny red light blinking steadily. Michael had no idea that 3 months ago, I'd installed a comprehensive security system throughout our home. Not just cameras, but audio recording too. A decision that seemed paranoid then, but proved prophetic now. When did you do this? I asked, buying time as I remembered the footage I'd reviewed just this morning. The late-night meeting between Michael and Lisa 2 nights ago, their whispered conversation in our living room when they thought I was asleep. Does it matter? He waved his hand dismissively. The papers are signed. You have 30 days to move out. Lisa's already planning her renovations. I thought about the hidden camera footage stored safely in my cloud account. The video showing Michael and Lisa huddled over these same papers, his slurred voice revealing their real plan. Lisa, once Emma's gone, we'll sell this place and split the profits. That'll show her what happens when she questions my spending. You really think you can just throw me out of my own home? I kept my voice level, remembering the legal consultation I had last week. Another paranoid decision that now seemed like divine intervention. Michael's face darkened. Your home? I pay for this house. My money, my decision. You're just the decoration I'm tired of looking at. I almost laughed at the irony. He had no idea about the trust fund my grandmother had left me, the one that had actually provided the down payment for this house. I let him believe he paid for everything because that's what he needed to feel powerful. Another mistake I was done making. Fine, I said, gathering my purse. I'll start packing. Michael blinked, clearly thrown by my calm acceptance. That's it? No crying? No begging. Would it change anything if I did? He shifted uncomfortably, probably remembering all the times my tears had made him feel guilty enough to back down. No, it wouldn't. Lisa deserves this place more than you ever did. She's family. I headed for the door, pausing only to check my phone. The security app showed the system was still recording, capturing every word of this conversation. You're right about one thing, Michael. Family deserves this house. He followed me to the door, probably expecting me to break down at any moment. Where are you going? To see my lawyer, I replied honestly. Someone should review those transfer papers, don't you think? His laugh followed me out the door. Waste of time. Everything's legal. I got into my car, my hands steady as I started the engine. Through the rearview mirror, I watched Michael pull out his phone, probably to call Lisa and gloat about how easily I'd given up. He had no idea what was coming. The footage from 2 nights ago played in my mind. Michael, drunk on expensive scotch, revealing to Lisa how he'd been embezzling from his company to fund his gambling habit. Lisa, eager to help him hide his tracks by using this house sale as a cover, both of them, caught on camera, planning to defraud not just me but Michael's company too. I pulled out my phone and dialed my lawyer's number. Sarah, it's Emma. Remember that footage I showed you last week? I think it's time to use it. Yes, he did exactly what we expected. No, he has no idea about the cameras. As I drove toward the lawyer's office, I thought about the home Michael was so eager to take from me, the house my grandmother's money had bought, the home I poured my heart into for 12 years. Michael thought he was punishing me, but he'd just given me exactly what I needed, proof of his crimes. The paperwork is ready, Sarah said through the car's speakers. Once we show the evidence to the DA, your husband's going to have a lot more to worry about than property transfer. I ended the call, a small smile playing on my lips. Michael always said I was too quiet, too passive. He was about to learn that quiet doesn't mean weak, and some people are smart enough to gather evidence before making their move. The security camera footage would show more than just his fraudulent property transfer. It would reveal months of late-night conversations about embezzled money, plans to hide assets, and now clear evidence of attempted fraud. Michael and Lisa thought they were so clever, but they never once looked up at the tiny cameras capturing their every word. I parked outside Sarah's office building, taking a moment to check my phone. 3 missed calls from Michael already. He was probably starting to wonder why I'd left so calmly. Soon enough, he'd understand that sometimes the quiet ones are the most dangerous. This house battle was about to become much more than Michael bargained for, and I had everything I needed to make sure justice was served. He wanted to talk about family. He was about to learn what happens when you betrayed the wrong person. The next morning, I sat in Sarah's office, watching Michael's face turn ashen as he viewed the security footage on her laptop. His sister Lisa sat beside him, her usual smug expression crumbling with each passing minute of the video. Turn it off, Michael snapped, but Sarah let it play. I particularly like the part coming up, she said calmly, where you explain exactly how you've been moving company funds through fake accounts. The DA found that very interesting. The color drained from Michael's face. You recorded us? That's illegal. Actually, I spoke up, sliding a document across the table. Here's the security system contract signed by you 6 months ago. See that clause you initialed? full audio and video recording throughout the property. Lisa jumped to her feet, her designer purse clutched to her chest like a shield. This is ridiculous. The house transfer is legal. Is it? Sarah raised an eyebrow, pulling out another file. Let's talk about legal. Like how you both plan to flip the property and split the profits to hide embezzled money. Or how you forged Emma's signature on the preliminary documents. I never. Michael started, but Sarah held up her hand. The footage shows you practicing her signature, Michael. 3 different cameras caught that little practice session. Would you like to see those angles too? I watched them squirm, remembering all the times they'd made me feel small, insignificant, unworthy. Michael's constant criticism, Lisa's snide remarks about how lucky I was that her brother had settled for me. What do you want? Michael finally asked, his voice hoarse. The truth, I replied simply. Tell me why. Why try to take my home? Your home. Lisa scoffed, but there was fear behind her bravado. Michael paid for it. I pulled out one final document, my grandmother's trust fund statement. Actually, my inheritance provided the down payment and half the mortgage payments, another fact you both seemed to forget. Michael stared at the statement, his jaw clenching. That's impossible. You never had money of your own. No, I let you believe that because your ego needed it. Another mistake I won't repeat. Sarah cleared her throat. Here's what's going to happen. You're both going to sign these papers voiding the fraudulent property transfer. Then, Michael, you're going to come clean to your company about the embezzlement. And if we refuse, Lisa challenged. In response, Sarah pressed play on another video clip, this one showing Michael explaining in detail how he'd been stealing from his company for years, using Lisa's accounting firm to cover his tracks. The DA has copies of everything, I said quietly. Your choice if you want them to use it. Michael slumped in his chair, the fight draining from him. You planned this? All of it? No, I corrected him. You planned this. I just made sure there was evidence. The next hour was a blur of signatures and legal terms. By the time we finished, the fraudulent transfer was voided, and Michael had signed a confession for his company's legal team. Lisa stormed out, already on the phone with her own lawyer. As Michael stood to leave, he turned to me. I underestimated you. Yes, I agreed. You did. Once they were gone, Sarah turned to me. You okay? I looked down at my hands, surprised to find them steady. You know what's strange? I am. For the first time in years, I really am. The company's legal team will be in touch about the embezzlement, she said. Michael's looking at serious consequences. I nodded, gathering my things. I know. But that's his problem now. Walking out of Sarah's office, I felt lighter somehow. The home Michael had tried to steal was still mine, but more importantly, I finally found my voice. No more quiet acceptance, no more looking the other way. My phone buzzed with a text from Lisa. You've ruined everything. I hope you're happy. I smiled, typing back. Actually, I am. Enjoy your legal bills. The house keys felt different in my hand as I drove home. Not just pieces of metal, but symbols of something bigger. I protected what was mine, not through dramatics or manipulation, but through careful planning and quiet strength. Michael and Lisa had never bothered to look up to notice the cameras capturing their schemes. They'd been so convinced of their own cleverness, so certain of my weakness, that they'd never considered I might be smarter than they thought. As I pulled into my driveway, I thought about the changes ahead. Michael would face consequences for his embezzlement. Lisa's accounting firm would come under scrutiny, and I would finally live in my home on my own terms. The security cameras blinked their quiet red lights as I entered, faithful witnesses to the end of one chapter and the beginning of another. Sometimes the best revenge isn't loud or dramatic. It's simply letting people face the consequences of their own actions. 6 months after that day in Sarah's office, I stood in my newly renovated kitchen, sipping coffee. The morning sun streamed through the windows, filling the space with warmth. The house no longer reminded me of Michael. Every trace of him was gone, replaced with colors and textures that made me feel safe and at peace. The news had been big at first, local executive caught in fraud, and siblings involved in property scam. Michael admitted his crimes and took a deal, which meant jail time and paying back what he had stolen. Lisa lost her job too, her firm wanting nothing to do with the scandal. My phone buzzed. A text from Sarah. Michael's sentencing is next week. Want me to come? No, I replied. That chapter is closed. And it was. The house was legally mine, and I had used my grandmother's trust fund to renovate it, removing every painful memory. The security cameras stayed, those silent protectors that made me feel safe again. The doorbell rang. I checked the security feed on my phone. It was Lisa. She looked different, tired, worn down. I opened the door but didn't invite her in. "What do you want, Lisa?" "I came to apologize," she said, her voice softer than before. "What we did was wrong." I studied her face. "Why now?" "Because I lost everything," she admitted. "My job, my reputation. And it made me realize we didn't just try to take your house. We tried to take your peace." I thought of all the nights I had watched them scheme against me in my own home. "You both thought I was weak." Lisa shook her head. "We were wrong. I see that now." I nodded, accepting her apology but not offering forgiveness. Some things can't be undone. "Goodbye, Lisa." As I closed the door, I felt lighter. I didn't need their regret. I had something better, self-respect, and a home that was truly mine. That evening, I hosted a small dinner party, something I had never done before. Sarah was there, along with new friends from my book club. The house was filled with laughter, the kind that came from happiness, not manipulation. Sarah raised her glass. To new beginnings, and to security cameras. Everyone laughed. They didn't know the full story, and they didn't need to. Success isn't always loud. Sometimes it's quiet strength, knowing when to be patient and when to act. After my guests left, I walked through my home, touching the walls that now held new memories. The security cameras blinked, not just as protection, but as reminders. I had been smart, I had been strong, and I had won. Michael's sentencing would happen without me. Lisa's apology wouldn't change the past. But I had something better than revenge. I had peace. I pulled out a photo of my grandmother and whispered, "You were right. Sometimes the quiet ones are the strongest." The house creaked softly, but it wasn't lonely anymore. It was comforting. This was my home, built on courage and protected by wisdom. My phone buzzed again. Another text from Sarah. "Are you sure you don't want to go to the sentencing?" I looked around at the life I had rebuilt and typed back, "No need. I'm exactly where I want to be." And I was. Happy endings don't always look like we expect. Sometimes they look like quiet triumph, a home that feels safe, and a woman who learned to stand her ground. "Your sister deserves this vacation more than we need a baby." My husband's voice crackled through the phone, attempting to sound confident but betraying a hint of nervousness. "I've already transferred our IVF savings to her account." I stood in our kitchen, my hand gripping the counter as I processed his words. The $45,000 we'd spent 3 years saving, the money that represented our hopes and dreams of starting a family, gone. Given to his sister Emma for a luxury European vacation. "Perfect," I replied, my voice steady. "Thanks for letting me know." There was a pause on the other end. This wasn't the reaction David had expected. He'd been prepared for tears, for anger, for the emotional outburst he'd grown accustomed to dismissing as my baby fever. Instead, he got calm acceptance. "Look, Olivia," he started, his tone shifting to the condescending one he perfected over our 8 years of marriage. "Emma's been through a rough divorce. She needs this break. We can always save up again for the IVF. You're only 34, there's plenty of time." I looked down at the papers on the counter in front of me, documents I'd received just 2 weeks ago from my doctor. Papers that would have shattered David's convenient narrative about plenty of time. Papers that made his betrayal even more devastating. "You're right," I said, surprising myself with how easily the lie came. "Emma deserves this. I hope she has a wonderful time." "Really?" David sounded suspicious now. "That's it. No argument?" "No argument," I confirmed. "I need to go. I'm running late for my shift at the hospital." I hung up before he could respond, before the trembling in my hands could reach my voice. As a pediatric nurse, I'd learned to keep my composure in crisis situations. Right now, that training was the only thing keeping me together. 2 weeks ago, my doctor had called me in for a private consultation. The results of my latest fertility tests showed that my condition was deteriorating rapidly. If we wanted to conceive through IVF, we needed to act within the next 3 months. After that, my chances would drop dramatically. I hadn't told David yet. I'd been waiting for the right moment, gathering resources, and making plans. Now I realize I'd been right to keep it to myself. My phone buzzed with a text from Emma. OMG sis. David told me what he did. You're the best for understanding. Can't wait to post pics from Paris. Love you. I stared at the message, remembering all the times Emma had competed with me for David's attention and resources. The emergencies that always seemed to coincide with our important moments. The way she talked David out of our previous IVF attempt 2 years ago because she needed help with her down payment. Family comes first. She'd insisted, while David nodded along. My hands stopped shaking. A strange calm settled over me as pieces clicked into place. All those years of playing second fiddle to Emma's needs, of watching David prioritize his sister's whims over our future, they'd been leading to this moment. I opened my laptop and logged into our joint account. As expected, David had cleaned it out. All our careful saving, the extra shifts I picked up, the bonuses I contributed, transferred to Emma's account that morning. What David didn't know was that I'd seen this coming. 6 months ago, after Emma's divorce, I'd watched her eyeing our savings with that familiar calculating look. I'd started preparing then, opening a separate account at a different bank. Every extra shift, every bonus for the past 6 months had gone there instead of our joint account. I even sold some of my jewelry, pieces David had never noticed anyway. The joint account he'd emptied, it contained exactly what I'd calculated Emma might convince him to take. The real IVF fund was safe, along with something else David had forgotten about, proof of every penny I contributed to our joint savings, documented meticulously over the years. My phone buzzed again. This time it was a message from Dr. Torres, my fertility specialist. Appointment confirmed for next week. All paperwork ready as discussed. I took a deep breath and began gathering what I needed. 8 years of marriage had taught me a lot about David and Emma's pattern of behavior. Now it was time to put that knowledge to use. As I prepared for my shift at the hospital, I thought about all the times David had dismissed my concerns about his sister's influence. You're being paranoid, he'd say. Emma's family. Well, he was right about one thing. Family does come first. As I walked through the hospital corridors during my shift, memories of the past 8 years played through my mind like a movie reel. Each scene revealed a pattern I'd been too loyal, too trusting to acknowledge. The time David postponed our honeymoon because Emma had a crisis with her then-husband. The anniversary he missed because Emma needed help moving. Every milestone in our marriage seemed to have Emma's shadow looming over it. Olivia. Sarah, my colleague at the pediatric ward, called out, "Everything okay? You seem distracted." I managed a small smile. David gave our IVF savings to Emma for her vacation fund. Sarah's face went through a range of emotions: shock, anger, and finally, understanding. She was one of the few people who knew about my separate account and my contingency plans. "So it finally happened," she said quietly, pulling me into the break room. "What are you going to do?" I pulled out my phone and showed her the email I'd received that morning from my lawyer. Remember Jake Harrison, the attorney whose daughter I helped through chemo last year? Sarah nodded, her eyes scanning the email. "He's agreed to take your case. Pro bono," I confirmed. "He says given the documentation I have, plus David's latest stunt, we have a strong case for financial misconduct during marriage." "Does David know you've been documenting everything?" I shook my head. He never paid attention to the financial stuff. Too busy managing Emma's life to notice what was happening in his own home. My phone buzzed with another text from Emma. "Just booked first-class tickets. This is going to be amazing. Thanks again for being so understanding." Sarah read the message over my shoulder and scoffed. "She's really rubbing it in, isn't she?" "Let her," I replied, my voice steady. "Every message, every post, every font is just more evidence." During my lunch break, I called Dr. Torres to confirm the details of our plan. As one of the top fertility specialists in the state, she had connections with several clinics that offered financing options. Between my separate savings and their program, we could proceed with the IVF as planned. "Are you sure you want to do this alone?" she asked gently. "I'm sure," I replied. "I've spent 8 years waiting for David to choose our family over his sister's demands. I'm done waiting." When I got home that evening, David was waiting. He had that familiar look, the one that meant Emma had convinced him he was right and I was being unreasonable. "Emma's so excited about the trip," he started, as if we were discussing something as trivial as dinner plans. She's already planned the whole itinerary. Paris, Rome, Barcelona. Sounds wonderful, I said, heading to the kitchen to start dinner. I'm sure she'll have an amazing time. He followed me, thrown off by my continued calm. Look, I know you're probably upset deep down, but Emma needs this. After everything with her ex-husband. David, I interrupted, turning to face him. I said it was fine. What more do you want from me? He stood there, mouth slightly open, clearly unprepared for this version of me. The version that wasn't begging for explanations or fighting for his attention. I just want you to understand, he stammered. I understand perfectly, I replied, my voice level. Now I have an early shift tomorrow, so I'm going to head to bed early. As I lay in bed that night, listening to David watching TV downstairs, I thought about the appointment scheduled with Jake Harrison for tomorrow. About the file of evidence I collected over the years. About the IVF procedure scheduled for next month. David had made his choice. Now it was time for me to make mine. My phone lit up with one last text from Emma. Just bought the cutest outfits for my trip. Can't wait to post all the pics. You're seriously the best sister-in-law ever. I smiled in the darkness, thinking about how different things would look in just a few weeks. Emma had no idea she was documenting her own downfall, one gleeful post at a time. Tomorrow would be the first step toward my new future. With or without David, I was going to have the family I always dreamed of. And no one, not even his precious sister, would stand in my way this time. The next morning, I met with Jake Harrison in his office downtown. The space was warm and professional, much like Jake himself. He spread out the documents I provided on his mahogany desk, nodding as he reviewed them. This is thorough, he said, picking up the detailed record of my contributions to the joint account. Most people don't think to document everything so carefully. 8 years of watching my savings disappear into Emma's emergencies taught me to keep receipts, I replied. Jake leaned back in his chair, his expression serious. The transfer to Emma's account yesterday, that's what we call the smoking gun. It shows a clear pattern of financial misconduct and misuse of marital assets. I pulled out my phone, showing him Emma's latest social media posts. Designer shopping sprees, first-class ticket confirmations, luxury hotel bookings, all paid for with our IVF fund. She's not exactly being subtle about it, Jake observed, taking screenshots. This actually works in our favor. Have you told David about your medical situation? I shook my head. Not yet. I wanted to secure my position first. Smart, he nodded. Given the time-sensitive nature of your condition and the fact that he gave away funds specifically saved for medical treatment, we can request an emergency hearing. As Jake outlined our strategy, my phone buzzed with a text from David. Emma's so happy. I knew you'd understand once you had time to think about it. You're amazing, babe. I showed the message to Jake, who added it to our growing file. He's building our case for us, he mused. Does he have any idea you're here? No, I replied. He thinks I'm at work. I took a personal day. Good. I'd like to file everything today. The sooner we move, the better our position. Jake gathered the papers into a folder. Are you ready for what comes next? Once we file, there's no going back. I thought about the years of putting my dreams on hold, of watching David consistently choose his sister's wants over our needs. I'm ready. That afternoon, while David was at work, I went to the bank and closed our joint credit cards. Jake had advised me to protect myself financially before the paperwork was served. I also withdrew my portion of our remaining joint savings, a measly $3,000 that Emma hadn't managed to convince David to share. When I got home, there was a package waiting on the doorstep. Inside was a framed photo of Emma with a note. For your living room, so you can see how amazing the money was spent. Love you. The audacity might have hurt once. Now it just strengthened my resolve. I was preparing dinner when David came home, whistling. He stopped short when he saw me calmly setting the table for one. Where's my plate? He asked, confusion evident in his voice. I think you should eat at Emma's tonight, I replied evenly. She'll probably want to show you all her new purchases. Are you angry? He seemed genuinely puzzled. I thought you were okay with this. I'm not angry, David. I'm done. I placed a manila envelope on the table. You've been served. His face went from confusion to shock as he opened the envelope. Divorce papers? This is ridiculous. All this over Emma's vacation? No, I said quietly. This is about 8 years of watching you choose your sister over our marriage. The vacation fund was just the final straw. You're overreacting, he sputtered. We can save up again for the IVF. Actually, we can't. I handed him the medical documents I'd been keeping to myself. I needed that treatment within the next 3 months. But don't worry, I'm still getting it. Just not with you. The color drained from his face as he read the doctor's report. Why didn't you tell me? Would it have mattered? I asked. Would you have said no to Emma? His silence was all the answer I needed. I have an IVF appointment next month, I told him. I'm doing it on my own, with my own money you and Emma can't touch. I suggest you start looking for a place to stay. Your sister has plenty of room, I hear. Olivia, please, he started, but I cut him off. Check your credit cards before you leave. They're closed. And don't bother checking the joint account. I've withdrawn my portion. You can keep the rest, though I suspect Emma's already got plans for it. As David stood there, stunned and speechless, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. 8 years of compromising, of coming second, of watching my dreams slip away, it was finally over. And my new beginning was just around the corner. 2 months later, I sat in Dr. Torres' office, staring at the ultrasound screen with tears in my eyes. Against all odds, the first round of IVF had been successful. I was pregnant. Congratulations, Dr. Torres smiled warmly. Your numbers look excellent. I'd say all that careful planning paid off. As I left the clinic clutching my ultrasound photos, my phone buzzed. It was a message from my lawyer. Final divorce hearing scheduled for next week. Emma's vacation posts have been invaluable evidence. Emma's European adventure had turned into a social media spectacle. Designer shopping sprees, luxury hotels, champagne-soaked yacht parties, all meticulously documented on Instagram. Each post had been carefully added to our court documentation, proving exactly where our IVF savings had gone. David's attempts to justify the situation had grown increasingly desperate. Emma needed this break, he'd argued during mediation. It was a mental health necessity. The mediator had been unimpressed, especially when presented with Emma's social media feed. Mental health necessity, she questioned, looking at photos of Emma partying in St. Tropez. This looks more like reckless spending of marital assets. I pulled into my new apartment complex, a cozy place closer to the hospital where I worked. Sarah was waiting outside with a care package. Well, she asked eagerly as I approached. Wordlessly, I handed her the ultrasound photo. Her squeal of delight echoed across the parking lot. I'm going to be an aunt, she exclaimed, hugging me tight. Have you told anyone else yet? Just you, I replied. I'm waiting until after the divorce is finalized next week. Inside over tea, Sarah updated me on the latest gossip. Emma had returned from Europe to find her own financial situation in shambles. The vacation had burned through not just our IVF money, but her own savings as well. She tried to hit David up for more money, Sarah reported. But apparently his accounts are all frozen pending the divorce settlement. I sipped my tea, thinking about the irony. How did he respond? From what I heard, he finally said no to her. First time for everything, I guess. The day of the final hearing arrived bright and clear. I dressed carefully in a conservative navy suit, the slight swell of my pregnancy still barely visible beneath the jacket. David and Emma were both there, looking considerably less polished than in their recent social media posts. Emma's designer vacation wardrobe couldn't hide the panic in her eyes as our lawyer presented the financial evidence. The judge was particularly interested in the timing, how the money had been taken just when it was most crucial for medical treatment. Mr. Mitchell, she addressed David, you deliberately misappropriated funds that were saved for time-sensitive medical treatment, giving them to your sister for a luxury vacation. Do you understand the severity of this action? David's response was quiet. I didn't know about the time sensitivity. Because you never asked, I interjected softly. You never asked about anything that didn't involve Emma. The judge's ruling was decisive. Given the documented financial misconduct and the medical circumstances, I was awarded a significant portion of our assets. Emma was ordered to repay her portion of the misappropriated funds, though we all knew that was unlikely to happen. As we left the courthouse, David tried to approach me one last time. Olivia, he called out. I'm sorry. I know now what I did was wrong. Maybe we could. I turned to face him, my hand instinctively resting on my stomach. His eyes widened as he noticed the gesture, realization dawning on his face. You're? Yes, I said simply. I am, and this baby will grow up knowing that they were wanted, planned for, and chosen first. Always. I walked away without looking back, leaving David standing there with Emma, who was already complaining about the repayment order. 6 months later, as I sat in my newly decorated nursery, I received a final text from David. I understand now what I lost. I hope you and the baby have the life you deserve. I looked around the peaceful room, at the life I'd built for myself and my growing baby, and smiled. We already did. Sarah brought over dinner that evening, and as we sat talking about the future, about baby names and nursery colors and all the joy ahead, I felt complete. The path hadn't been what I expected, but it had led me exactly where I needed to be. My hand rested on my growing belly, feeling the baby kick. We're going to be just fine, little one, I whispered. Just fine indeed. And we were. Only blood relatives in this photo, my mother-in-law Amanda said, pushing me aside with her hand on my shoulder. Why don't we be useful and take the picture instead? I held the camera, watching as my husband James' family gathered on the grand staircase of their vacation home. This was supposed to be a happy reunion for Amanda's 60th birthday, but once again, I felt like an outsider even after being married to James for 5 years. My name is Olivia, and I'm 32. I was used to Amanda's little ways of leaving me out, but this time felt different. Maybe it was because I had just found out some shocking news that morning, something I hadn't even told James yet. Or maybe I was just tired of trying. Mom, James said from the stairs, Olivia should be in the picture. She's family too. Amanda laughed, sharp and cold. Dear, these photos are for the family history book. We need to keep track of our bloodline. Olivia understands, don't you? I forced a smile, hiding how my hands were shaking. Of course, Amanda. Whatever you think is best. James looked like he wanted to argue, but I gave him a small shake of my head. Not now. We had bigger things to reveal later. As I took their picture, I thought about the DNA test results waiting in my email. I had taken the test months ago, just to learn more about my family since my parents died when I was young. But the results had changed everything. Make sure you get everyone in the frame, Amanda said, fixing her blouse. And try not to shake the camera this time. Last year's pictures were blurry. They weren't blurry. I was a professional photographer, but Amanda always found a way to criticize me. Next to me, my sister-in-law Sophie rolled her eyes. She had married Amanda's nephew and knew exactly what I was going through. Perfect, I said after taking several photos. Would anyone like to check them? I'm sure they're fine, Amanda replied, already walking away. Now let's move to the garden. Blood relatives only, of course. As everyone left, James stayed behind. This is too much, he whispered, holding my hand. We should tell them now. Not yet, I said. Let's wait for dinner. It's her big night. James sighed and kissed my forehead. You're too kind to her, after everything she's done to you. I thought about all the small insults, the way she always introduced me as just James' wife, never by my name. 5 years of trying to fit into her family. The day dragged on with more blood relatives only pictures. Amanda was like a director, making sure everything was perfect. With each click of the camera, my secret felt heavier. Olivia, dear, Amanda called as we went inside for dinner. Since you're not in the photos, you must have plenty of energy left. Help in the kitchen, will you? I saw Sophie give me a sympathetic look as I followed Amanda. The kitchen was already filled with appetizers she had ordered. She would never actually cook for her own party. You can arrange these on plates, he said, barely looking at me. Make them look nice. And be careful with the crystal dishes. They're family heirlooms. Her words made me smile. If only she knew. What's so funny? Amanda asked sharply. Nothing, I said, placing the food on a tray. Just thinking about family heirlooms. She eyed me suspiciously. Yes, well, some things should stay in the family. Blood family, she said firmly. I stayed quiet, letting her words pass. Meanwhile, the DNA test results burned in my mind. James and I had even taken another test to be sure. We needed to be certain before tonight. As I finished, Amanda turned to me again. I've been meaning to talk to you. I sighed. She'd had many talks with me before. James is my only son, she said, pretending to sound kind. And while you've been fine as a wife, I do worry about the future, about our family legacy. The Morgan family name is very important to you, I said carefully. Exactly. She looked pleased. So you understand why these things matter. The photos, the family history, the bloodline. It all must be preserved properly. I thought again about the DNA results. About the truth Amanda didn't know yet. Of course, I said softly. Blood is everything, isn't it? She smiled, thinking I agreed with her. I'm glad you understand. Now let's bring these out to the real family. As she walked out, her perfect hair in place, I couldn't help but smile. In just a few hours, during her birthday dinner, her world of blood relatives only was about to collapse. I picked up a platter, remembering the moment James and I first saw the results. The shock, the laughter, the irony of it all. Sophie peeked into the kitchen. Need help? I can't listen to Amanda's history lesson anymore. Thanks, I said, handing her a tray. Just wait until dinner. The family history is about to get very interesting. The dining room buzzed as everyone found their seats. Amanda, of course, had arranged it so I was far from the core family. I sat at the end of the table next to Sophie and a distant cousin, because even distant blood relatives mattered more to Amanda than a spouse like me. James caught my eye from his seat near his mother and gave me a quick wink. My stomach flipped. The DNA test results were ready on our phones, waiting for the perfect moment. Amanda tapped her wine glass. Before we begin, I'd like to say a few words about family. Sophie leaned over. $10 says she mentions bloodlines in the first sentence. 20 says it's in the first 5 words, I whispered back. Our precious family bloodline, Amanda began. Sophie sighed, slid a 20 under the table, and tried not to laugh. Amanda went on about the importance of the Morgan name, how their family had produced doctors, lawyers, and even a senator. James fidgeted, hand near his phone. I shook my head slightly, not yet. Let her finish. And while we welcome those who marry into our family, Amanda said, barely glancing at me, we must always remember that true bonds come from blood. The first course arrived, giving me a moment to breathe. Amanda continued sharing stories about her perfect family, reminding everyone that she was still collecting photos for the new family history book. Blood relatives only, of course, she added. That was our cue. James cleared his throat. Speaking of family history, Mom, Olivia, and I have something to share. Amanda raised an eyebrow. Oh, are you finally giving me a grandchild? Not exactly, James said, pulling out his phone. Olivia took a DNA test a few months ago. The results were interesting. The room fell silent. Amanda tightened her grip on her wine glass. I don't see how Olivia's DNA has anything to do with our family history. That's where you're wrong, Mom. James stood behind my chair. Show them, honey. I pulled up the email and handed my phone to Sophie. She gasped as she read it. No way, she whispered, looking between me and Amanda. Amanda frowned. What is it? I took a deep breath. According to the DNA test, I'm related to the Morgan family. Directly related. Amanda's face turned pale. That's impossible. Not impossible, James said. Olivia's grandfather, her mom's dad, was a Morgan, your father's brother, the one who disappeared in the 60s. Amanda's wine glass slipped from her fingers, shattering on the floor. No one moved. That can't be, she stammered. Uncle Thomas died young. He never had kids. Actually, I said gently, he changed his name and started a new life. He had a daughter, my mom. Which means you and my mom are first cousins, and James and I are second cousins. The room was silent. Around the table, people looked shocked, amused, or unsure what to say. Sophie kept scrolling through the results, her mouth open. We even took a second test to be sure, James added. It's confirmed. Olivia has more Morgan blood than half the people in your pictures today, Mom. Amanda sat frozen. For years, she had treated me like I didn't belong because I wasn't real family, but by her own rules, I was. Sophie finally broke the silence. Well, this definitely needs to go in a family history book. A few people chuckled. Amanda just stared at me, as if seeing me for the first time. The woman who had spent years treating me like an outsider was, in the end, my aunt. The remainder of dinner passed in a blur of whispered conversations and shocked glances. Amanda barely touched her food, her perfect posture slumping slightly as she processed the news. I watched as she periodically shook her head, as if trying to deny the reality before her. After dessert, while others cleared the table, Amanda disappeared into her study. James wanted to follow her, but I stopped him. "Let me," I said softly. "We need to have this conversation." I found her sitting at her desk, staring at an old photograph. As I approached, I recognized it. A young man in a military uniform, smiling broadly at the camera. "That's him, isn't it?" I asked quietly. "Thomas Morgan. My grandfather." Amanda nodded slowly. "He was my favorite uncle. When he disappeared, everyone assumed. We never knew." She looked up at me, her eyes swimming with tears. "You have his smile. How did I never notice?" I sat down in the chair across from her desk. "Life has a funny way of coming full circle, doesn't it? All these years," she whispered, "all those things I said about blood relatives, about family legacy." She covered her face with her hands. "I've been horrible to you." "Yes, you have," I agreed calmly. "But now we have a choice. We can either let this revelation tear us further apart, or we can use it to build something new." She lowered her hands, revealing mascara-streaked cheeks. "How can you even want to build anything with me after how I've treated you?" I reached into my purse and pulled out another document, not a DNA test this time, but a photograph. "This is my mom," I said, sliding it across the desk. "Your cousin. She died when I was 12, but she always told me that family was about love, not blood." Ironically, it turns out I had both with the Morgans all along. Amanda picked up the photo, her hand trembling. "She looks just like Aunt Sarah," she murmured. "Thomas's wife." "I have more photos," I offered. "And stories, if you'd like to hear them. We could add them to the family history book, all of them, not just the blood relatives." A ghost of a smile crossed her face. "I'd like that." She paused, then added, "I have so much to make up for." "Yes, you do," I agreed. "But we have time. And now that we know we're family, by blood and by marriage, maybe we can start fresh." The next morning, Amanda called everyone together for another family photo. This time, she positioned me right next to her, in the center of the group. "Everyone in," she announced, her voice carrying a new warmth. "Blood relatives, spouses, partners, every single person who makes this family whole." Sophie grinned as she set up the camera timer and rushed to join us. "No blurry photos this time?" "Your photos were never blurry," Amanda admitted, surprising everyone. "I was just being difficult. You're actually quite talented, Olivia." As the camera flashed, capturing the moment, I felt James squeeze my hand. In that fraction of a second, everything had changed. The walls of exclusion had crumbled, replaced by bridges of understanding. Later, as we helped Amanda organize photos for the family history book, she paused over a picture of James and me on our wedding day. "You know," she said thoughtfully, "maybe it's time to redefine what we mean by family legacy." I watched as she opened to a fresh page in the book, carefully placing the photo of my grandfather Thomas alongside pictures of his long-lost family. Below it she wrote, "Family is not just in our blood. It's in our hearts, our choices, and sometimes in the most unexpected discoveries." The Morgan family legacy hadn't been diminished by including everyone. It had been enriched. And somewhere, I like to think my mother and grandfather were smiling at how their family had finally come full circle. As we closed the family history book, now filled with all our stories, Amanda hugged me for the first time in 5 years. "Welcome home," she whispered. "For real this time." And in that moment, I realized that sometimes the strongest family bonds are forged not just by blood, but by the willingness to open our hearts to new possibilities and to find family in places we never expected to look. Not so generous gifts. "This isn't fair, Mom. Aunt Victoria bought Jake the new iPhone 15. Why can't you ever get us anything nice?" Emma yelled before stomping up to her room, slamming the door so hard that the pictures on the wall shook. "I'm Olivia Parker, a 42-year-old mom trying to raise my kids right. But my sister-in-law, Victoria, is making it difficult. She moved in nearby 6 months ago after her third divorce, bringing fancy bags and big promises. Now she's spoiling my kids with expensive gifts I can't compete with." I stood in the kitchen, gripping the counter. Upstairs, I heard Emma texting her aunt, probably thanking her again for the $300 shoes Victoria bought last week. Shoes that would soon be forgotten, just like all the other expensive things piling up in her closet. Then I heard Emma type something that broke my heart. Mom's just jealous she can't give us what you do. It wasn't always like this. Emma and Jake used to understand the value of money. We weren't poor. I was a nurse and their dad, Mark, was a teacher. We lived comfortably, but we wanted them to earn what they wanted. Then Victoria arrived. She always showed up with shopping bags saying they deserve better than just an average life. When I tried to refuse the gifts, she would sigh dramatically and say, "See, your mother doesn't want you to have nice things." Mark didn't see the problem. "She's just being generous, Liv," he'd say. "What's the harm?" The harm? My children were changing. They used to be grateful. Now, they only cared about price tags. Last week, I found Jake throwing away the sweater I had knitted for his birthday. "Aunt Victoria says only poor people wear handmade clothes," he muttered. Then Victoria made an even bigger promise, showing up at Jake's soccer game in a brand new Tesla and loudly telling everyone she would buy him one for his 16th birthday. "Since your parents won't," she added. I felt helpless. How could I fight this? But something about Victoria's spending didn't make sense. She claimed to be rich, yet she lived in a small apartment and often asked Mark for money. She kept buying gifts, but I noticed she reused shopping bags and paid with different credit cards. Then I found a clue, a crumpled receipt in Jake's pocket from an expensive boutique. It had a red stamp. Return item. Story Curide P. That $800 designer jacket Victoria gave Jake? She had returned it. I started digging. Online, I found complaints about a woman matching Victoria's description. Someone buying luxury items, showing them off, then returning them. I also saw something strange in her social media posts. Pictures taken in front of storage units. That's when I realized the truth. Victoria wasn't rich, she was drowning in debt. She wasn't buying gifts out of love. She was trying to keep up an illusion. Then I got a text from her. "Taking the kids shopping for new phones this weekend. Don't worry, I'll pay. That's what real love looks like." I stared at the message. My kids thought her love was measured in gifts. They didn't see the trap she was pulling them into. I needed proof, something they couldn't ignore. And I knew exactly where to find it. The next morning, as I sipped my coffee, a notification popped up on my phone. Victoria had just posted another Instagram story. There she was, standing in front of her storage unit, surrounded by shopping bags, captioning it, "Just organizing some surprises for my favorite niece and nephew. #best aunt ever." But what caught my eye wasn't the designer logos or her perfectly posed smile. It was the unit number clearly visible behind her, 247. More importantly, I recognized the facility's distinctive orange doors. It was Clearview Storage, just 15 minutes from our house. Before I could investigate further, Emma burst into the kitchen. "Mom, can I go to the mall with Aunt Victoria after school? She's getting me a new laptop for my photography." I hesitated. Emma had been saving for that laptop for months before Victoria came along. "Honey, what happened to wanting to earn it yourself?" She rolled her eyes. That was before I realized how pointless it is to wait when Aunt Victoria actually cares about my dreams. The words stung, but they also strengthened my resolve. "Sure," I said casually. "Have fun." As soon as the kids left for school, I drove to Clearview Storage. The facility was quiet at this hour, just a few cars scattered across the parking lot. I walked past Unit 247, noting the heavy padlock securing it. "Can I help you?" A friendly voice called out. The facility manager, Linda according to her name tag, approached with a clipboard. "Actually, yes," I smiled. "I'm interested in renting a unit. I noticed some people using them for business storage." Linda's expression shifted slightly. "Yes, though we've had some issues with retail return fraud lately. One tenant has been causing problems, buying things just to photograph them and return them later. Creates chaos for our other tenants." "Really?" I kept my voice casual. "That sounds complicated." "Oh, it is, especially when the credit card companies get involved. Speaking of," she glanced at her clipboard, "I need to post another notice on 247. The payment's late again." I watched as she walked to Victoria's unit, placing a bright orange notice on the door. My phone buzzed. Another Instagram story from Victoria. "Shopping spree time with my favorite girl. Emma deserves the best. #surprise." That afternoon, I picked up Jake from soccer practice. He was unusually quiet during the drive home. "Everything okay?" I asked. He fidgeted with his phone. "Mom, Aunt Victoria promised to buy our whole team new cleats for the championship. But today Coach said the credit card payment didn't go through." I gripped the steering wheel tighter. "Did you tell your aunt?" "Yeah, she said it was just a bank error. But some of the guys were laughing about it. It was embarrassing." My heart ached for him. "Jake, you know true generosity isn't about big promises or expensive gifts, right?" He stared out the window. "I guess. It's just, Aunt Victoria makes everything seem so easy, like we don't have to worry about money at all." "That's because she's not the one dealing with the consequences," I said softly. When we got home, Emma was already there, tears streaming down her face. "Aunt Victoria canceled our shopping trip. She said something came up, but I saw her arguing with someone at the store earlier. They were saying something about returned items and banned accounts." I sat down next to her on the couch. "Emma, honey, I think there's something you and Jake need to understand about your aunt's gifts." But before I could continue, Jake called out from the kitchen. "Mom, look at this." He was staring at his phone. Someone posted a video of Aunt Victoria at the storage facility. She's yelling at the manager about something. We huddled around his phone, watching the shaky footage. There was Victoria, designer purse swinging wildly as she gestured at Linda. "You can't lock me out. All my inventory is in there." "Inventory?" Emma whispered. The video continued, Victoria's carefully crafted image crumbling as she screamed about return policies and credit card limits. The final frame showed her attempting to block Linda from placing a unit seized notice on Unit 247. "I don't understand," Jake said. "What inventory? Why does Aunt Victoria have a storage unit?" I took a deep breath. "Why don't we find out? Linda called me earlier. Apparently, your aunt abandoned the unit. As her next of kin, we're allowed to clear it out before they auction it." 20 minutes later, we stood before Unit 247. Linda unlocked it, stepping back as the door rolled up to reveal Victoria's house of cards. Emma gasped. Jake dropped his phone. The unit was packed with returned items. Clothes with tags still attached, electronics in resealed boxes, shoes lined up in perfect pairs. Each item had a corresponding return receipt attached. In the corner, a whiteboard listed dates and store names, marking when each item needed to be returned to stay within policy limits. "But, my laptop?" Emma's voice trembled. I picked up a nearby shipping box. Inside was the same model Victoria had promised Emma, along with a return label already filled out for next week. "And the team cleats?" Jake asked. Linda pointed to a stack of shoeboxes. "Let me guess, she promised these last week?" Right before the credit card company finally froze her accounts. The kids were silent as they moved through the unit, recognition dawning as they found items they'd been gifted, all carefully documented for future returns. "She was going to take everything back," Emma whispered. "All those gifts, all those promises, they were never real." Jake picked up his new phone box, finding the return receipt already stapled to it. "We were so awful to you, Mom, all because of fake presents." I pulled them both close. The gifts were real. It was the intention behind them that was fake. Your aunt wanted to look generous without actually being generous. Emma buried her face in my shoulder. "I'm so sorry about what I said about the sweater. About everything." "Me too," Jake added. "You and Dad always taught us that we should earn the things we want. We forgot that because we got distracted by easy stuff." Linda appeared in the doorway. "The auction company will be here tomorrow. You can take anything you want to keep, but honestly," she gestured at the staged photographs taped to the wall, showing Victoria posing with various gifts in front of different storage units. "I don't think any of this is worth keeping." True gifts. As we drove home from the storage unit, the car was silent except for the sound of Emma deleting her Instagram pictures with Aunt Victoria. Jake sat in the back seat, running his fingers over the sweater I had made for him. "Can I still wear this?" he asked softly. "I mean, if you haven't given it away." I smiled at him in the mirror. "Of course, honey, it's yours." Emma looked up from her phone, frowning. "Mom, Aunt Victoria is saying we stole from her storage unit. She's posting that you're jealous and trying to ruin her reputation." I pulled into our driveway and saw Mark's car already there. "Let's go talk to your dad. He needs to hear the truth." Inside, we found Mark in the kitchen, staring at his phone. He looked up, troubled. Liv, did you really break into Victoria's storage unit? She's called me 5 times, crying. Dad, Jake interrupted, holding out his phone. You need to see this. We all gathered at the table as Jake showed him the video of Victoria's meltdown at the storage unit. Emma added screenshots of receipts and pictures of all the gifts stacked inside. I explained how Victoria had returned most of the expensive items and was using different credit cards to keep up appearances. Mark's face paled. All those things she gave you, the phone, the laptop, the cleats, she promised they were yours. They were never ours, Emma said. She was just using us for show. Mark slumped in his chair. I gave her money for bills. She said she was investing it. She was pretending, I said gently. And in the process, she made our kids believe that love is measured by how much money you spend. Jake suddenly stood up. Wait here. I want to show you something. He ran upstairs and came back with a shoebox filled with money. I stopped saving when Aunt Victoria made it seem pointless. But maybe I can start again. Emma left the room and returned with her own savings jar. Me too. Mom, will you help me make a budget? Like you tried to before. Tears filled my eyes as I nodded. Of course. Just then, Mark's phone rang, Victoria. This time, he put it on speaker. Mark, you have to help me, she cried. Your wife is ruining everything. Those gifts were for the kids. You mean the gifts you plan to return? Mark interrupted. Save it, Victoria. We saw everything. The storage unit, the receipts, the credit card scams. You didn't just lie to us. You used my kids. I was trying to give them the life they deserve, she argued. Emma stepped forward. No, Aunt Victoria. You were using us to make yourself look good. Mom and Dad were trying to teach us real values, but we didn't see it. You made us think love was about expensive gifts, Jake added. But real love doesn't disappear after a photo is posted. There was silence on the other end. Then Victoria whispered, Mark, please. Goodbye, Victoria, Mark said firmly. Don't contact us again. He hung up and pulled us into a hug. That night, for the first time in months, we really talked. Emma planned ways to save for the laptop she wanted. Jake proudly wore his sweater and thought of ways to raise money for his soccer cleats. Mark smiled. I think we all learned something important. Money can't buy real love and respect. And real gifts, Emma added, come from the heart, not from a storage unit. Over the next few weeks, our family felt whole again. Sunday movie nights returned, complete with homemade pizza and laughter. Jake organized a fundraiser for his soccer team. Emma started taking photography jobs to earn her own money. Victoria's social media eventually disappeared. We heard she had moved away, hopefully to start fresh. One morning, while cleaning her room, Emma found a designer dress Victoria had given her, still with the tags attached. Should we return it? She asked. I looked at her and smiled. What do you think? Emma thought for a moment and grinned. Maybe we could donate it. Someone else might need it more than we do. I hugged her tight. That sounds perfect. And so we began a new tradition, not of receiving, but of giving. Because the most valuable gifts aren't wrapped in expensive boxes. They come from love, honesty, and family. Marcus barely looked up from his phone as he spoke. Let's keep it simple. No lawyers, no splitting assets. You move out, and I'll let you keep your car. His words hit hard, as if 15 years of marriage meant nothing. I gripped my coffee mug, trying to steady myself. And the house? I asked. You expect me to just walk away from the home I've spent years renovating? He finally met my eyes, looking annoyed. Look, Anna, Megan really loves this place. She already has plans to redecorate, and honestly, you're always out volunteering anyway. It just makes sense. Megan, his 24-year-old girlfriend from the gym. Of course she loved the house I had built and cared for. I took a slow sip of coffee, forcing myself to stay calm. When did you meet her? I asked, even though I already knew. Marcus shifted uncomfortably. That doesn't matter. What matters is that we've grown apart. You're busy with your projects, and Megan, she understands me. She's young, full of life. I held back a bitter laugh. At 42, I had never felt more alive. But Marcus had been too busy chasing his youth to notice. And when do you want this settled? I asked. By the end of the month. Megan's lease is up, so it makes sense for her to move in then. You can stay with your sister while you look for an apartment. He spoke as if he was planning a weekend trip, not tearing my life apart. I stood and walked to the window, looking at the garden I had worked so hard on. And if I said no? Marcus sighed. Come on, Anna. Don't make this hard. You know I can afford better lawyers. Let's keep this civil. I turned back to him with a small smile. You're right. We should keep this simple. His eyes narrowed. Really? You'll agree? Of course, I said softly. I'll start packing this weekend. Marcus seemed surprised by my calmness. He had expected tears, begging, maybe even a fight. Instead, he got quiet acceptance. It made him uneasy. Well, good, he said, standing up. I'll be at Megan's until you're out. Just leave your keys on the counter. As he walked to the door, I called out, Marcus. He stopped. How long have you been planning this? He hesitated. A few months. I wanted to be sure before saying anything. I nodded. That's funny. I've been planning too. He frowned. Planning what? You'll see, I said, turning back to my garden. I waited until the door shut before pulling out my phone and texting my lawyer. It's time. What Marcus didn't know was that I had seen this coming. The late nights at the gym, the sudden focus on his looks, it was obvious. But while he was busy with his new life, I was preparing for this moment. I walked through the house, running my fingers over the walls I had painted and the fixtures I had chosen. In the study, I opened my laptop and pulled up a folder labeled Garden Plans. Inside were no landscaping designs, only financial records, legal documents, and proof of everything I had contributed to this home. A message popped up from my sister. Did he do it? Are you okay? I replied, yes, just like we expected. Time for phase 2. Elena had been my rock, encouraging me to document everything when we first suspected Marcus was cheating. Now all the pieces were in place. By noon, I had made my calls to my lawyer, the private investigator, and a contractor who had helped document my work on the house. Standing in my kitchen, the kitchen I had paid for while Marcus claimed we had no money, I allowed myself a moment of anger. Then I took a deep breath, squared my shoulders, and got to work. Marcus wanted a simple divorce? He'd get one, just not the way he expected. He had underestimated me for too long. That was about to change. I sent one final text to a group chat I had created months ago. Operation House Guard is a go. Within seconds, replies flooded in. My sister, my lawyer, my closest friends, all ready to help. Marcus thought I was the same naive 25-year-old he had married. He was about to learn just how much I had changed. The next week played out exactly as I expected. Marcus showed up at the house while I was out, bringing Megan along to start planning her changes. What they didn't know was that my security cameras caught everything. Every insult about my tastes. Every smug comment about what they do. This garden is way too much, Megan said on the footage. We should turn it into a pool. That night, my sister Elena and I watched the recordings. She had moved in to help me pack. But in reality, she was documenting everything while I set my next move in motion. Did you see their faces when they walked into your art studio? Elena asked, pausing the video. They have no idea that room alone is worth more than Marcus makes in a year. I smirked, thinking of the custom skylights and ventilation system I'd installed. Marcus thinks I waste money on hobbies. He never even looked at the property assessments I've been collecting. Every upgrade I had made to the house over the last 5 years was carefully documented, paid for with my inheritance and work stipends. Money Marcus never noticed because he never cared. The next morning, I got a text from Marcus. Movers coming Thursday. Make sure your stuff is packed. I replied with a simple, knowing it would annoy him. He always hated when I used emojis instead of words. That afternoon, I met with my lawyer, Sandra. She spread out the documents we gathered, smiling. The house's value has gone up by 287% since you started renovations, she said, tapping the paperwork. And we have proof that you paid for every major improvement. Marcus hasn't contributed a dime since 2019. I leaned in. And my separate accounts. Sandra nodded. All accounted for. The inheritance, consulting fees. Everything is legally yours. Marcus can't touch a penny. While he was busy chasing his midlife crisis, I had been building a case. Every bank transfer, every receipt, every investment, I had it all. What about his better lawyers? Sandra asked, amused. I slid my phone across the table, showing her the private investigator's report. He's drowning in credit card debt. Those fancy gym memberships, the designer suits, all on borrowed money. Thursday came. The movers arrived, ready to pack up the house. I met them in the driveway with a folder in hand. Mrs. Harrison, the lead mover, asked, "We're here to pack up the house." I smiled and handed him a document. Actually, there's a court order preventing the removal of anything until the divorce is settled. Feel free to check with your legal team. Within 20 minutes, the movers left and Marcus arrived, furious. "What the hell, Anna?" he shouted. "I thought we agreed to keep this simple." I stayed calm. "We did. I'm just protecting my property." "Your property?" he scoffed. "I'm the one who paid the mortgage." I raised an eyebrow. "Really? When was the last time you actually checked the mortgage statements?" His face turned red. I could see him struggling to remember when he last looked at our finances. For years, I handled everything while he focused on his career and later, his gym routine. "This is ridiculous," he snapped. "I'm calling my lawyer." "Please do," I said. "I'm sure they'll love reviewing the property assessments and renovation records my team put together." His anger faded into confusion. "What team? What documentation?" I smiled, the same calm smile I gave him when he first suggested our simple divorce. "You know those volunteer committees you mocked? The Historic Preservation Group? The Neighborhood Board? Turns out they're really helpful when proving property values." He finally realized what I had done. For years, he ignored me, thinking I was just playing around with home projects. Now he saw the truth. I had built something real, something valuable, and I wasn't letting it go. "Megan's waiting to move in," he said weakly. "She might want to check the property records first," I replied. "And maybe your financial situation too." I turned and walked inside, leaving Marcus standing in the driveway as his plan unraveled. Elena was waiting in the kitchen with a high five and a glass of wine. "Think you'll finally check those mortgage papers?" I sipped my wine, remembering when I refinanced the house 3 years ago, putting it in my name alone. Marcus had signed the papers without reading them. "He'll figure it out soon enough," I said. Just like everything else he should have paid attention to. The truth hit Marcus like a tidal wave over the next few days. Every attempt to assert control over the situation revealed another layer of preparation he hadn't anticipated. When he tried to access our joint accounts, he discovered they'd been properly documented and separated months ago. When he sent his lawyer to threaten legal action, they were met with overwhelming evidence of my sole financial contribution to the property's value. The final blow came when Megan, who'd been eagerly planning her interior decorating schemes, learned the truth about Marcus's finances. I was in the garden, tending to my roses when Marcus's car screeched into the driveway. He looked disheveled, nothing like the confident man who'd announced his plans for our simple divorce just weeks ago. "You planned this," he accused, storming up the garden path. "You've been planning this for years." I carefully deadheaded a rose before responding. "No, Marcus. I protected myself while you were busy destroying our marriage." "There's a difference." Megan left, he admitted, slumping onto the garden bench. She saw the credit card statements, the mortgage documents, everything. "Funny how quickly people leave when they discover the truth," I replied, thinking of all the times I'd asked him to review our finances together. All the attempts I'd made to involve him in household decisions. "I can't believe you refinanced the house without telling me." "I did tell you. 3 years ago. You were too busy with your new gym membership to read what you were signing." I turned to face him fully. "Just like you were too busy to notice where the money for all these renovations came from." He looked around the garden, really seeing it for the first time. The carefully planned landscapes, the professional hardscaping, the custom irrigation system. All improvements I'd made while he assumed I was just puttering around with plants. "Your aunt's inheritance," he said slowly. "The consulting work. You weren't just volunteering, were you?" "I was building something, Marcus. While you were trying to recapture your youth, I was investing in our future, or what I thought was our future." Elena appeared at the back door. "Everything okay up here?" I nodded, appreciating her protective instincts. She'd been my backbone through all of this, helping me stay focused on the long game instead of reacting emotionally to Marcus's betrayal. "The divorce papers are ready," I told Marcus. "The real ones, not your simple version." Sandra will email them to your lawyer today. And the house is mine. Legally, financially, and morally. You can collect your personal belongings once the agreement is signed. There's a detailed inventory of what's yours and what stays. He stood up, looking older and smaller than I'd ever seen him. I really messed up, didn't I? Yes, I said simply. You did. After he left, Elena brought out 2 glasses of wine. We sat in my garden, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of pink and gold. You know, Helena said, when you first told me your suspicions about Marcus, I wanted you to confront him immediately. But this was so much better. I smiled, thinking of all the quiet hours I'd spent preparing, protecting, and building while Marcus assumed I was oblivious. Sometimes the best revenge is simply being prepared. The divorce was finalized 3 months later. Marcus moved into a small apartment across town. His dreams of playing house with his younger girlfriend shattered by the reality of his financial situation. I kept everything I built: the house, the garden, the art studio, and most importantly, my dignity. The documentation I'd gathered left no room for arguments or prolonged legal battles. Megan, I heard, had moved on to someone else. Someone whose promises of luxury actually had substance behind them. I couldn't bring myself to feel sorry for either of them. 1 year later, I stood in my garden, which had just won the local historical society's preservation award. The irony wasn't lost on me. All those committees Marcus had mocked had actually been building my reputation as a restoration expert, making plans for the new greenhouse. Elena asked, joining me with our traditional glass of wine. Actually, I smiled. I'm thinking of starting a consultation business. There are a lot of old houses in this neighborhood that need someone who understands their value. As we toasted to new beginnings, I thought about how different things might have been if Marcus had just paid attention, if he'd seen me as a partner instead of a convenience. But then again, if he had, I might never have discovered just how capable I was on my own. The simple divorce he'd wanted had turned into a masterclass in preparation and patience. While he'd been planning his escape, I'd been quietly building my fortress. In the end, the house he'd so casually tried to take from me had become the symbol of my independence. Sometimes the best victories are the ones you plan for quietly, while others underestimate you. Marcus had wanted simple. He got simple, just not the kind of simple he'd expected. James left a note on the kitchen counter. I'm taking Amanda with me. No property division. Don't contact me. His handwriting was rushed, but I understood every word. My husband of 12 years was leaving me for his 23-year-old gym trainer, thinking he could just walk away from everything we built together. My name is Diana. I'm 35, and I never expected to start my day reading a goodbye note from my husband. But here I was, holding the end of my marriage in my hands. What James didn't know was that I saw this coming. The late nights at the gym, the new clothes, the locked phone. He wasn't as sneaky as he thought. Even more telling, his sudden interest in our properties. He started asking questions about deeds and ownership, things he never cared about before. I took a sip of my coffee, remembering my recent call with our family lawyer, Marcus. Diana, if you think he's planning something, we need to act now. Marcus had been a trusted friend for years. I told him James believed everything was in his name, unaware that I kept records of every financial contribution I made before and during our marriage. James never liked dealing with paperwork. He loved bragging about our real estate, but I was the one who handled all the legal details. At the start of our marriage, he happily left that boring stuff to me while he focused on the big picture. That worked in my favor. My phone buzzed. A message from James. Amanda and I need the house this weekend to get my things. Be gone. I actually laughed. He really thought he was in control. I walked to my home office and opened the safe behind a family photo. Inside was a thick folder filled with documents I'd been collecting since the day I noticed Amanda getting too close to James at a barbecue. The truth? The house we lived in. Bought with my inheritance, solely in my name. The rental properties he loved to show off? 3 out of 4 were purchased with my own savings. Every dollar, every deed, every contract was documented. James used to roll his eyes at my habit of keeping records, but my father always said, always have proof of what's yours. Last month, I worked with Marcus to update all the paperwork, making sure everything was legally protected under my name. James had been too distracted with Amanda to notice the documents he signed without reading. Another message from James. Don't bother with a lawyer. Everything is in my name anyway. I smiled. He had no idea. I opened my laptop and checked the security feed for one of our rental properties. Sure enough, there was James walking inside with Amanda. He probably thought they had a fresh start in his building. Just then, the front door opened. Diana? Marcus had arrived right on time. He finally did it, he asked. I handed him the note. Just like you predicted, he thinks he owns everything. Marcus shook his head, flipping through the documents. He really has no clue you've been ahead of him this whole time, does he? I smirked. James never paid attention to details. Marcus nodded. All your properties are secure. He can try to fight it, but he won't win. My phone rang, James's name flashing angrily on the screen. I let it go to voicemail. He's going to be furious, Marcus warned. Let him be, I said, shutting my laptop. He wanted to leave without splitting anything. I just made sure he got exactly what he asked for. Text after text started pouring in from James. What the hell is this? These papers are fake. You can't do this to me. Answer your phone. I turned off my phone and looked at Marcus. What's next? He pulled out a timeline of our legal filings. His lawyer will call soon. Given the evidence we have, they'll probably push for a quick settlement. I nodded, feeling a mix of relief and satisfaction. This wasn't how I wanted my marriage to end, but I refused to walk away with nothing. Marcus flipped to another page. One more thing, remember that rental property James thinks is his. The one he and Amanda just walked into? I have the security company ready to change the locks. Just say the word. I thought about James and Amanda, sitting inside what they believed was their new home. I smiled. Do it. Marcus made the call. As I sat back in my chair, I felt calmer than I had in months. James had underestimated me for the last time. He thought he could take everything from me. He was about to learn the hard way. He never really had anything to begin with. The next morning, I woke up to 47 missed calls and over 60 messages from James. Each one was more desperate than the last. The final text caught my eye. This is ridiculous. I'm coming over now to sort this out. I calmly made my coffee, already knowing how this would go. Sure enough, minutes later, his car screeched into the driveway. The front door banged open. He still had his key, but that would change today. Diana? James shouted. What the hell is this? These papers can't be real. He stormed into the kitchen, his face red with anger, waving the legal documents. Amanda stood in the doorway, looking far less confident than she had before. I leaned against the counter, sipping my coffee. Good morning, James. Finally read the paperwork I handle. This is insane, he sputtered. You're saying the house is yours? The rental properties too. I built this portfolio. I set my mug down. Did you? Which part exactly? The house my inheritance paid for. The rentals I bought with my engineering salary while you were off networking. His face turned even redder. I made all the decisions. I chose the properties. I raised an eyebrow, pointing at buildings and saying I want that one isn't the same as owning them. You'd know that if you ever read what you signed. Amanda stepped forward. James says half of everything is his. We're going to fight this. I actually laughed. Are you? With what evidence? James, show Amanda the property deeds. The financial records. Oh wait, you can't. Because you never kept any. James's confidence was fading. The court will call this marital property. You can't just claim everything. I pulled out a folder. Actually, I can. Here's the proof. Every transaction, every contribution. I even highlighted your part. It's a very short section. James's hands shook as he flipped through the pages. Amanda looked over his shoulder, her expression changing as she realized the truth. By the way, I added, you'll need to move your things out of the rental property by tomorrow. The locks have been changed. Amanda's eyes widened. You can't kick us out. James said that property was his. I shrugged. James says a lot of things. The property deeds say otherwise. Feel free to check with the county records office. James dropped into a chair, the fight draining from him. This isn't fair, he muttered. My calm cracked just a little. Was it fair when you threw away our marriage? When you planned to leave me with nothing? Amanda shifted awkwardly. I should wait in the car. Yes, I said, you should. After she left, James looked at me, and for the first time, I saw fear in his eyes. What do you want? I want you to understand what you've lost, I said. While you were planning to leave me with nothing, I was making sure you got exactly what you deserved. I'll fight this, he said weakly. Go ahead, I shrugged. Marcus already prepared for that. He has records of your gym dates with Amanda. The money you spent on her from our joint account. We can bring all of that to court. James swallowed hard. You planned this all along. No, James, I protected myself when I realized you were planning to betray me. There's a difference. His phone buzzed. Probably Amanda. He stared at it before asking, what about my clothes, my stuff? You can collect your personal things tomorrow between 9 and 11 a.m. Marcus will be here to supervise. After that, the locks will be changed. Marcus, he scoffed. Should have known you'd run to him. Yes, you should have. And you should also know that if you try to take anything that isn't yours, it'll be considered theft. There are cameras now. James stood up, shoulders slumped. I never thought you'd be so calculating. And I never thought you'd try to take everything from me, I replied. Life is full of surprises. At the door, he paused. I did love you once, you know. I know, I said. But love without respect isn't enough. You might want to remember that with Amanda. As he left, I let out a long breath. Through the window, I saw him arguing with Amanda in the car. I felt nothing for either of them. My phone buzzed. A message from Marcus. How did it go? Exactly as expected, I replied. Shocked, then angry, then defeated. Just like you said. Good. From now on, let me handle everything. I looked around the kitchen, remembering all the good times James and I had shared here. But I refused to let his betrayal define my future. Tomorrow, I would start fresh, knowing that I had outsmarted the man who thought he could leave me with nothing. 6 months after James left that note on my kitchen counter, I sat in Marcus's office, looking at the final divorce papers. The numbers told a clear story, one James hadn't planned for. He's agreed to everything, Marcus said, sliding the papers across his desk. The properties are yours, and he's dropping any claims to joint assets. I signed, feeling lighter with each stroke of the pen. How's he handling it? Marcus smirked. Let's just say his new life with Amanda isn't as glamorous as he hoped. They're renting a tiny apartment across town. Turns out, personal training doesn't pay much. I expected to feel satisfied, but all I felt was peace. And the last rental property, the one he thought was his, Marcus checked his files. New tenants move in next week. The rent will go straight to your account. As I left Marcus's office, my phone buzzed. James had sent a message. I hope you're happy. You took everything. I started to reply but then deleted it. He still didn't get it. I hadn't taken everything. I just kept what was rightfully mine. His own choices had cost him everything else. At home, I walked through the house. It felt different now. I had redecorated, swapping out the dark furniture James loved for bright, modern pieces. His sports memorabilia was gone, replaced with local artwork I had collected. My phone rang. Lisa. Mom told me. Is it really over? Just signed the papers, I said. How do you feel? I thought for a moment before answering, like I can finally breathe again. Lisa laughed. You know, when you started documenting everything before James left, I thought you were being paranoid. But you saw it coming, didn't you? I saw the signs, I admitted. He suddenly cared about property deeds and bank statements. He thought he was being smart, but really he was just giving himself away. And Amanda? I chuckled. Last I heard, she's realizing that dating a man who abandoned his wife might not be the best decision. That evening, I poured a glass of wine and stepped onto the patio. The garden was blooming, a change I had made after James left. He liked a perfect lawn, but I had planted wildflowers and herbs instead. An email came in from the property management company. The rentals were doing well, and I didn't even have to worry about them. I had hired a team to handle it. A car door slammed next door. James and Amanda were visiting a friend across the street. They looked tired. No designer clothes, no expensive car. James glanced at my house, our old house, and saw me standing there. Our eyes met. I lifted my wine glass slightly, not to mock him, just to acknowledge the moment. He looked away and hurried inside. Later, as I got ready for bed, I found an old photo of us, back when we were happy. I put it in a box labeled past and shut the lid. A final text from Marcus appeared. Congrats. This isn't just an ending, it's a new beginning. He was right. James had tried to leave me with nothing, but instead, I had gained something even better, proof that I was stronger than he ever realized. The next morning, I woke up early, made coffee, and sat in my garden watching the sunrise. My divorce was final. My properties were secure. My future was mine to create. James had underestimated me. He thought I was weak. Instead, I had been 10 steps ahead the whole time. As I stood among the wildflowers, I smiled. The best response to betrayal isn't anger or revenge. It's proving them wrong and living better than they ever imagined.